A shout out to Music of the Future. Thank you so much for having me as a guest. First question is, what is your name and tell us more about you? My name is Mari Fong, and I'm the executive producer and host for the Check Your Head Mental Health for Musicians podcast. I'm also a seasoned music journalist and life coach for musicians. The idea for the Check Your Head podcast began in 2017 when we lost some great musicians to suicide, like Chris Cornell of Soundgarden and Chester Bennington of Linkin Park. I thought to myself, how could musicians who brought me so much joy leave this world in so much pain? And I understood that pain because I also have experienced bouts of depression and anxiety in my personal life, which led me to create the Check Your Head podcast, where notable musicians and experts come to share their stories and solutions for mental health and wellness. We have a variety of artists come on the podcast, such as Sean Morgan of Seether, drummer and comedian Fred Armisen, and the iconic singer-songwriter Linda Ronstadt, along with up-and-coming artists such as Grandson and India Shawn. We pair each musician interview with a mental health expert like Dr. Dan Reidenberg, a world-renowned expert on suicide prevention, and Dr. Ish Major, a top psychiatrist and relationship coach, and they also share their knowledge. Our mission is to normalize conversations on mental health, encourage others to get help, and to provide solutions for recovery on our website at checkyourheadpodcast.com. And all of our solutions are free or affordable so that all musicians and listeners can benefit. Question 2. What is your job role in the music industry and how did it start? Well, most of my career in the music industry has been as a music journalist, getting my first start writing for free for a Los Angeles newspaper called Campus Circle. Now, my reason to write at the time was to give promotion to my friend's local band, writing an article on them for the newspaper. But I soon started writing more on music. I found out I really enjoyed it and eventually was promoted to music editor and then promoted to the acting editor-in-chief for the newspaper. It was a lot of hard work, but once I got my in as a writer, I was able to prove myself, and my career continued to expand to doing live show photography, producing a Sirius XM radio show, and doing some freelance writing and more. After years of going through my own mental health journey, I decided to become a certified life coach for musicians. Yet something kept nagging me to go bigger and to help more people. And that's when the Check Your Head podcast was born. I really feel good about helping others. It's become my reason to get up in the morning, and I hope that anyone and everyone who listens to the podcast knows that it's okay to get help, that it's a sign of strength, and keep trying until you find what works for you. And if you need solutions for recovery, just go to our website at checkyourheadpodcast.com. Know that recovery is possible and that a better life is waiting for you. Question 3. What's your take on the music industry today? Well, when I was a college student at USC, I interned for both Island Records and A&M Records. Now, back then, no one really talked much about mental health issues, but musicians were still having them. And there were a number of musicians that committed suicide. There were drug overdoses, with addiction often being tied to mental health issues. But there really wasn't much action taken, nor did they have the programs to take action that we have today. Today, the music industry has gotten better with recognizing mental health and doing something about it. When we lost Chris Cornell and Chester Bennington in 2017, it did make a mark. Even though musicians like Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse, Jimi Hendrix, and more have been losing their lives from lack of mental health and addiction treatment for decades. But now there's more action within the industry, with organizations like Tour Support and Sweet Relief Musicians Fund doing their part, but we need even more action. Everyone in the music industry should be putting health and wellness as a priority, with doctors, therapists, support groups, life coaches being more easily accessible to artists and others in the industry, and having it be accepted and encouraged. So now there's a lot of mental health organizations and resources. You'll find that if you want to stay anonymous, there are online support groups. You could choose telehealth. You could call and use text lines. And once we emerge from this pandemic, there's also one-on-one therapy, addiction programs, education, and more that you can receive. And you can find a list of these organizations on checkyourheadpodcast.com. Question 4. How does your career in musical insight help you with your podcast? After interviewing musicians for more than 20 years, I've been able to hear about their personal life and their life as a musician. I've also been on tour buses, backstage, and at the rehearsals doing interviews, enjoying their live shows. And all this experience has shown me firsthand what it's like to be a musician. Whether you're a local musician with just a few gigs under your belt, or you're a multi-platinum musician who's selling out arenas. This insight and experience has really helped me with my interviews, my life coaching for musicians, and for producing and hosting the Check Your Head podcast. The relationships I've built in the industry have been key to landing some great musician interviews, and my reputation for honesty and dependability has built trust with my peers and the musicians that I interview. This trust really allows for a relaxed, open, and honest conversation during the podcast, and I'm especially grateful and thankful for that. Question 5. What are 3 tips you would give to an upcoming podcast or music industry entrepreneur? Number 1, I'd find a career or work that you're passionate about, something that you love, or figure out how to make your passion a career. The thing with a career is that if you love something, you're going to continue with it despite the obstacles and the roadblocks. And persistence really is the key to success. Which brings me to the second tip, which is be persistent. Take time to celebrate the wins and keep going beyond the roadblocks. And there will always be roadblocks. Things often don't go as planned. So when that happens, see it and take it as experience. Focus on the solutions and carry on. Tip number 3, balance your work and personal life. Both are important and vital to your mental health and wellness. So make both your personal and your work life important. Question number 6, what are your social media accounts? My social media accounts for Facebook and Instagram are at Check Your Head Podcast. For Twitter, it's at Check Head Pod. For YouTube and others, you could search Check Your Head Podcast. And our website is checkyourheadpodcast.com, where you can find resources, listen to the podcast, and more. So thank you to everyone who listens to the Check Your Head Mental Health for Musicians podcast. Thank you for new listeners who are trying it out. You can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast. And always remember to be brave, ask for help, and be persistent in finding the mental help that you need. A shout out to Music of the Future. Thank you so much.